So now we've all watched The Social Dilemma and Hacking Your Mind, which is a series on PBS that included a portion, one of the three episodes was on the same topic, which is the impact social media is having on our society. And I just thought it'd be interesting to have a discussion today. So what did you think, or what were your opinions? Or especially now, I do want to say, because we have really 3 generations here. So I think it's an interesting group to kind of just look at it and see if we agree, disagree, or what we think needs to happen, or what our, what's your use? How much do you use social media?
Well, my job is social media management, so I do use it quite a bit. So I kind of have a different perspective. I don't use it so much on a personal level anymore. I try to kind of remove myself from it just because I get tired of it. When you're doing stuff for work and then trying to manage that part of it, but then still have the personal stuff, it just gets to be too much, and it's too much of a time sucker. But after watching, I think I watched first the Hacking Your Mind, and then I watched The Social Dilemma. And Hacking Your Mind was fascinating. I thought it was frightening and fascinating at the same time. The same thing with The Social Dilemma. But I was left feeling a little bit of a sense of doom, to be honest. Did anybody else feel like that?
I wouldn't say doom. So my experience with social media is extremely limited. Back in the early 2000s, I was very active on MySpace.
We're dating ourselves.
Yeah, I know. And then I think when I went to college and everyone was like, "Oh, you heard about this thing, Facebook? Like, we got to get on Facebook." I knew how much time that I'd spent on MySpace that I was like, I can't do this again. I can't invest more time into like another social media platform. So I think that not getting into Facebook kind of just like made it so that I wasn't interested in and didn't really understand social media, or like Twitter and like LinkedIn. So or Instagram, like I've never done any of that. But I hear from my friends who talk about like what people we used to hang out with are up to, and like it's always kind of just like an us versus them, like just like the weird stuff that people are getting into, and like, oh, they're making all these like political statements. So from what I saw, it was kind of like confirming what I assumed, because I don't have a lot of experience. So I kind of just have like been like, I don't think it's a good place.
Yeah.
And from the PBS documentary, it kind of just like confirmed that it's like really just like a way to be like, this is who I am, this is who you are, and to like a place of misunderstanding, or like, I don't know, being against, like setting yourself up to be against another group.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the money, right? That's what draws in the what was it, even fake news draws 6 times more views than real news or truth.
Mm-hmm.
Although truth is debatable now. I don't know how we even know anymore, but what about you, Vanessa?
For me, after watching both videos, it was shocking, because the way I've always seen social media, I've used it as a tool to stay connected. And like when I first got social media, it was Instagram. Instagram was the thing. And I just felt more connected actually to my friends. And especially now that we're in the pandemic, I feel like this is like the only way to stay connected to them. So that's why it was strange for me to see it from this perspective, because it felt so negative, but I've used it in a positive way. So
I think that's a key point, because the thing itself isn't evil or good. It's how it's being used. And I think what really opened my eyes was understanding the true depth of the manipulation, because all of us believe we can't be manipulated, right? So, and I know, for years in the workshops, we've been training, in our trainings, we've included to get off of devices, but that wasn't based on understanding. I mean, from my perspective, it wasn't based on understanding that we're being manipulated. it started with the time sucking. It was such a time waster. And I recognized it myself because I started out on Facebook personally. And it was like, oh, this is great. I can connect with family members out of state, and I can connect with friends. And then, you know, I was in graduate school, so we had our own little groups. And, you know, it's just this big social thing that seemed innocuous. And, but then I started noticing it was taking up a lot of my time. Then, of course, later, when I actually started studying it to put into the workshops, it was unbelievable. Even back then, and that's at least, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago that we really started including it in self-care and in productivity. And back then, I don't know what the number is now, but studies have been done to show that the average person picked up their phone 159 times a day. So even if you only looked at it for 1 minute, which I don't know anybody who just looks at it for 1 minute, because you read one thing and that's how it's designed, obviously, that we keep going. But even if you just looked at it for 1 minute, that's 2.5 hours a day. So I have all these people saying, I don't have enough time to get my job done. There's not enough hours in the day. And that's really what got my attention originally. Now, I still thought I was exempt from that. Like, I don't do much on social media, and I don't, you know, waste my time anymore. And I went on a writer's retreat up in the mountains north of Ojai with no cell service. So no TV, no radio, no cell service. Whole idea was to be secluded and write. And it was there that I caught myself multiple times reaching for my phone. And I was like, why am I reaching for my phone? It doesn't work here, right? So there's clearly a habit in there. One of the things that that I was really interested in from the Hacking Your Mind program was that it really focused on the fact that both the problem and the solution lie in the fact that we spend almost half of our days operating out of habit. And it's that habit, that's the exact thing that the tech companies are trying to hack into, is to get us to make it a habit of every down second you pick it up. Every time you hear a blip or a zing or a, do you call it a tweet, the sound? Or I don't know what you call the bird sound, but the chirp. It's like, you know, Pavlovian. We're like, oh, got to see what it is. Oh, got to see what it is. But it wasn't until I was on that retreat that I truly had to look at my own behaviors, because I thought for sure, and I wasn't, I mean, still don't think I was on it a lot. Certainly not 159 times a day, but the fact that it was even embedded in there without me realizing it, I found disturbing. So that is actually when I stopped going on Facebook at all, personally. I bet in the last 4 years, I've been on it less than a dozen times. And the only time I go on is when I can't remember someone's birthday. So I'll check Facebook, or I belong to a couple of Facebook groups. But I resisted that a lot, especially with my, one of the groups is a mindfulness group. And I don't think it's mindful. I mean, I think we can use it mindfully, but in general, I don't want to spend my time on Facebook. I'd rather, you know, if we're going to do it virtually now, because we have to, that's fine. But it's not the same thing as the constant going back and forth on a social media platform. So I don't know.
Fascinating. I think it's fascinating that I think it was the PBS special, that they said only 2 industries refer to their customers as users. One is drugs and the other is software. And I thought that was fascinating. And I know for me, I probably have a different perspective than everyone else on this call, because I have kids and they are both teenagers. So they're at the age now where social media it's scary. It's scary how big it is. It's scary, the safety aspect of it, the information that they have access to so easily. It's frightening. And what spoke to me a lot in The Social Dilemma was that every single person that was a host on that show, none of them allowed their kids social media accounts. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that created it. And they're the ones saying, listen, you aren't the customer. Your attention is the customer. And we are selling your attention to corporations. And towards the end of The Social Dilemma, when they were talking about, I think it was the AI inventor, he was talking about how until we stop seeing ourselves in this corporate way that everything is being sold with corporations, where corporations, a tree is more valuable dead than it is alive. And what does that say about us now? Now we're the tree, the people, our attention, our values. It's worth more to a corporation than we're seeing our own worth without the social media, without the information. And I think that the way that they've made it so addictive is that it's easy. Now you have a watch. Now the watch can tell you if you've missed something. So if you don't have your phone, now there's that watch right there. It's, oh, I have a message. Let me go get to my phone, or let me get to my computer as soon as possible. And the first thing I did after watching both of them is I deleted Facebook from my phone, and I deleted Facebook from my, on your Google screen where you can have your saved tabs. I took it off of that. So now I actually have to physically type in facebook.com to get onto the website instead of just clicking a button. And, they all recommended get rid of the notifications, get rid of all of those things that it's stealing your attention. We have to stop giving it away so easily.
Well, I will say that I get more resistance, and we teach a lot of different things and a lot of new concepts to people, and the one area that I get the most pushback on is getting off the devices. And there was a study that came out just a couple of weeks ago that or not a study, a survey, where 40% of the people surveyed would give up a pet before they'd give up their phone. And it's like,
oh my God.
What?
Seriously? Like, so
That's
people,
dark.
people are so addicted, and they don't realize. So I've had arguments in workshops where I'll say, even for health reasons, like I'll just say, don't sleep with your phone. So many people sleep with their phone, and I'll say, don't sleep with your phone. It's pinging. It's looking for that signal all the time. And there are studies that indicate it could be disrupting our melanin production, or the pineal gland. Like, it's doing things to us that we don't understand yet in our brains. And they will say, I have to, because something may happen overnight and I have to. And it's like, somehow we survived for a long time with the clunky phone on a wall and a cord. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't in our bedroom. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, get it out of your, so I think this is so addictive and people don't want to admit that they're addicted. So that even makes it more difficult to sort of switch it around. But going back to what you were talking about, Melissa, with, sort of it's so easy for them to manipulate is because they understand the psychology and they understand how our brains work. One of the things in the social dilemma that really disturbed me was they were talking about how these companies all experiment. They just put these little changes to see, can they change our behavior? Little tiny change here, can they change our behavior? And coming from psychology, or really anything, medicine, you have to have consent to experiment on people. You have to tell them what you're doing and have consent, and there's rules in place so that you can't cause harm to the people in the experiment. Mm-hmm. And it turns out billions of people are being experimented on psychologically every day.
I'm baffled at the lack of responsibility that these companies are taking. When I believe it was the Social Dilemma again, they were talking about how, depending on your location, your geography, when you type something into Google and Google auto completes and gives you suggestions, based on where you are, it's going to give you suggestions on what other people around you are thinking or searching for or whatever. So if you say, is climate change blank, and it'll fill in real, a hoax, how can I change it? There's different things that are coming at you. So then we wonder why is there such a huge divide between one side and the other side, and there's no gray anymore? Well, that's why. If we're not seeing the information, somebody else is looking at us going, God, how can they be so stupid? They're not, because I'm not seeing the same information as they are. The information that's being given to me as truth or fact is not really truth or fact. It's geared towards me for a reason, because that's what advertisers are paying for.
Well, and I don't know about, Vanessa, I know you watch some of the same streaming services I do. And I think, do we all have Netflix? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Netflix is one where so again, with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things, all those services, it's not obvious what's happening. If you're not aware that I'm seeing something different than you're seeing right across the street even, or, down the street. But with Netflix, because there are two of us here with our own Netflix accounts, we can clearly see. So like Michael will walk by and say, what are you watching? And I'll tell him what I'm watching. And he'll say, well, how did you find that? Because it doesn't come up on mine, right? So it's like, oh, so they're gathering the information. And so I really do mess with Netflix sometimes, because I will find some random thing that I would never normally watch. put it on and let it play in the background while I work, like just so that I mess up the algorithm. So it's like, no, quit giving me the same thing over and over again. But you don't have that ability. I mean, I guess you do. I guess you could do searches on the opposite thing of what you believe, because that's what this comes down to, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to reinforce our own beliefs. So I find it interesting that, yeah, and Melissa, I feel bad because part of the reason you are on social media more is because I won't go on it. So you have to do it for the company. But I think there are a couple of things here. Melissa and I discussed after watching these, like, do we want to continue, for instance, boosting posts, because that's advertising dollars we're giving to them. And part of the only way this is going to change is for our behavior to change, right? So if we're going to support this, then the only way you support it is money, because money makes the world go round now. So we had this discussion about it. And in reality, all of society is now set up this way. It's not like you can just say, I'm not going to participate at all. For most people, that isn't realistic. So Vanessa, like you were saying, and especially during a pandemic, so like you were saying, you're connected with your friends, and it's a positive way to use it. I mean, I think everything we post as a company is a positive contribution. We're trying to encourage people or motivate people. I don't think that's where the problem lies. I think the problem lies in this forcing information secretly to us, especially on, they want the most triggering things possible. They want us to get triggered. They want us to argue. They want us to call the other side stupid. And that is an area where the only thing that I can think of is that we pull back so their revenue drops. Like, don't respond to those things that are that way, and don't go on all the time don't go on unconsciously. Does that make sense?
Right.
So to me, that's where the mindfulness piece steps in, is if we're not aware we're doing, it's like me reaching for the phone. I wasn't aware that I was picking my phone up that many times a day or turning to it. So I think one of the things we have to look at is, why are we going to go on it? So, Melissa, if you're going on it for your work, that's your work. But personally, why are you turning to it? And I know for me, after I had that little epiphany up in the mountains, I did the same thing back then. I took all the apps off my phone. So for me to check posts, I have to come to a computer, turn it on, type in facebook.com, and you know what I mean? And I never do it. Like, the minute it came off my phone, I had already turned off all notifications. And again, Jesse, I think you may have heard this at a workshop. I tell them, turn off the notifications. I've been telling them for years, turn off the notifications. It's truly hitting a part of your brain that gives you a dopamine hit. So it's like you hear ding and you're like, oh, somebody wants to talk to me, or you know what I mean? And so you get that rush, and people even resist that. They don't want to be disconnected, not realizing that we've become more disconnected than we've ever been as a society.
Well, and they've even somehow gotten us to, like you said, it gives you that dopamine hit when you get that ding, but then when you see those red bubbles, it's like you're not succeeding. No red bubbles. You can't have anything in there. You need to make sure that
I don't even know what a red bubble is.
Yeah, what's a red bubble?
Notification bubble. So they've somehow programmed into us that if we have anything in that notification bubble, we need to take care of it. You got to get on it. You can't have that notification bubble there. Otherwise, it's on a clean screen and you don't have it, you don't have it together or figured out. So just like the dopamine thing, it's scary that they have succeeded in the opposite as well. Right?
Yeah, it's like a shaming.
I didn't have a smartphone until 2 years ago, and people thought, I think I got one because I was like, people think I'm insane. Like, people think that there's something that I can't be trusted or something because I don't have a smartphone. So I used to have like a regular cell phone, and I told you I don't really participate in social media, but even the way, like, getting a text message now, I feel like I need to respond immediately. And I don't know if it's because it's those like conversation bubbles or what, but I feel like my phone dings, I check it immediately, and I feel this immediate impulse, like I have to respond to them, because if I don't, it's rude or something. But before I had a smartphone, I would hear my phone beep because I had a text message and the phone was in the other room because I didn't carry it around with me all the time. And I didn't even feel the need to check it because I know it's a text message. It's normally like nothing. I didn't feel that compulsion, but now I do. Like, there's a big shift in even just that.
I think there's social pressure. I feel it, and it's funny because I almost got defensive a few times. I usually don't know where my phone is, especially now that we're home all the time. I look at it, it could be laying in the backyard, it could be in the bedroom, it could be anywhere. And then later I'll see I have either a voicemail or a text message. And then when I get back to the person, they're like, well, because it's 3 hours later, means I went to look for my phone for some reason, right? Again, it's not an unconscious act. If I'm going to use my phone, it's my idea. But I've had like, oh, and I'll say something like, well, I didn't even know where my phone was. Or, what do you mean you didn't know where your phone was? As if it's an appendage. I mean, it's like, well, I don't carry it with me everywhere. I don't even take it on my walks. And somebody one time said, you should take it on your walks all the time, because what if something happens? So there's this, to speak to what you're talking about, Jesse, it's almost like because we can instantaneously respond or be connected like that, somehow it's become we should.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel the need to do that.
And even with kids, if you remember when we were kids, Jesse, I mean, we're a little closer in age than Vanessa and I, but we didn't have phones. There were pay phones, like maybe somewhere, but it's not like you could really find one. So when you're out playing with your friends, when the lights came on the streets, you came home. And the parents weren't like, where have you been all day? What'd you do all day? Now we have LoJack on our kids. Like, I can find where they are any second. And it's scary. It takes some of that freedom and individualness or individuality away from the kids, where now they have no responsibility because you'll take care of it. You've got, the lowdown on where they are, what they're doing, when they need this, when they need that. And now we all share a digital calendar and they don't have to take care of any, I think it is ruining society. And one of the Facebook founders on that documentary said that it is tearing away the very fabric of our society. And that to me is frightening. And the reason that I, finished those videos with that feeling of dread and doom is that their solution is to convince everybody there's a problem, and for us to be the ones to make it stop. And I wish I had a little more faith that the bulk of society would actually see there's a problem. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know what that looks like, but it definitely does need to happen. It's scary.
And I have to wonder how much, is the world really a scarier place, or has all of this convinced us the world is a scarier place so that we have to have all this stuff on our phones? I don't know. So Vanessa, how would you feel if I don't know, the solution was limiting the use, let's say it's not a pandemic, okay, because I'm not going to say people should disconnect in any way during this time, but under normal circumstances, if you couldn't connect with your friends on social media, say, I don't know, only every 3 days, you know what I mean? So that you didn't touch it for the 3 days in the middle, what would that feel like for you?
See, it's different for me because my friends, especially my closest ones, we stay in contact by like sending each other funny videos or sending each other things that we plan to do in the future, and like that's how we stay connected. And so to not check, it's like I would feel left out, or if they would be talking about it and then I have no idea what they were talking about. I don't know, it would feel very strange. And I have gotten better, and I've actually looked into like how to turn off notifications, but it's like I found it, but I didn't want to turn it off because I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
I don't know, just.
So how old were you when you first started when you got your first phone?
Oh, when I got my first phone wasn't even a smartphone. And I begged my parents. I begged my parents for a smartphone. I think my first phone was in 6th grade, and I didn't get a smartphone until high school. So, and like thinking back, like being a kid, like I wanted it so bad because I felt like left out. Everyone had a smartphone, but I think it was in The Social Dilemma where it talked about like having a phone in middle school and how negative impacting it was for kids that age. And I'm actually very grateful that my parents didn't give me a smartphone at that time.
Yeah,
and I think it's hard for kids.
It is hard for kids. My son is 12 going on 13. He's 7th grade, and he's had a smartphone for a little over a year now. And he has no social media. He's not allowed to have social media, but still you see that addiction to it, to the point where I have to limit screen time. I have to put all of the restrictions on it where he can't, get access to certain things. But even if I take all of those precautionary measures, the fact of the matter is that he still has that need for it. And that's I think the whole point, right?
Yeah, because and that's, excuse me, that's why I was asking Vanessa too about like what age, because the younger you are when you develop a habit, then the more entrenched it becomes over time. And then I think it's painful. It's like, somebody trying to quit smoking or telling somebody they can never eat sugar again or whatever. If you've done it your whole life and it's suddenly taken away, it's not reasonable to think that people are going to voluntarily say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's hurting society. Unfortunately, most people don't think for the greater good to begin with, but I don't know that they're aware of personally how much it could be hurting them. Yeah. Because again, it can be used for good, and it can be used. I do believe you can use it for connection. My issue with it originally was seeing the disconnection, and this could be generational, because I was seeing couples in a restaurant both on their devices instead of talking to each other, or families sitting around a table all on devices and not talking to each other. And so I think if it replaces that personal communication aspect of life, then it's detrimental to our health. I think if it supplements it, so I know, like, and again, not during the pandemic, but I'm assuming, Vanessa, that in the normal world, you also saw your friends in person, right? It's not just communicating with them. But I mean, I don't know. I think from a mindfulness perspective, and I would love to hear if you have other ideas about this, but I think it's like not that hard. And it's not saying you have to give it up. It's more trying to, again, hack into your own mind, that unconscious part that's driving the behavior. So it's like, if you do have to remove the application. So either take it off the phone, or you could put it where it's not on the home page. But if it's on your phone, then you have to, you don't have to, Vanessa, but I'm saying if you really want to change the behavior, you have to turn off the notifications, because it's just like right there going, come back, come back, come back. So you could turn off the notifications, but check it once an hour, make sure you haven't missed anything, something like that. But you got to do something to break that cycle of responding to a machine and doing what it wants you to do. That's the scariest part about this. So to undo the habit, you've got to change the routine. So basically, if you're not being notified, you're not getting bells and whistles, you're not seeing the little bubbles, then what you can do is you can check it still as often as you want, but you've turned it around where you're in control. I want to check my phone now. You could check it every half hour. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times. It's a matter of, it's not driving you, you're driving the behavior. And then I would say each time you go to pick it up, then just pause and think about, why am I going to do this? So I'm going to use Vanessa because, Jesse, I don't know how often you're on with anybody, but I'm not trying to leave you out of this part. But if you're using it, it's the same thing it's not for you, Melissa, because of your job, but for the two of you, it'd be, why do I feel the need to do this? Because I want to reach out and talk to a friend, or, connect with a friend. Okay, there's nothing nefarious about that. If it's because I'm bored, or because I'm feeling bad about myself, or because I'm feeling lonely, that's not the best response to fulfill that need. So that would be so you first remove the temptation, and then you think about why you're doing it. And then I would say, honestly, everyone that uses social media, an easy thing to do is simply get another app that tracks the amount of time you're using it, because we do not judge well. We'll say, oh, I half an hour a day, and it's 4 hours a day. You know what I mean? So just track the time. And then if you do that once and you're horrified because you couldn't finish important things, then you might want to consider setting a time limit. I'm not going to use social media more than however many hours you want to dedicate it to. But it's the conscious thought. It doesn't matter what the time is. So I think that's another one. And then and then be responsible to a broader perspective, I guess. So like when they had those hearings, I saw the hearings of blips of them. I don't watch a lot of news, but I saw blips of like little clips of Zuckerberg, and I forgot who the other ones were, but testifying to Congress. And I'm like, what are they testifying about? I did not understand this at all. Like, why are they in Congress? And so I thought it was because they were getting too big, and maybe it was antitrust issues. I never even paid attention to it. So I think that the onus is on us for that. Is if there is a bill that's being presented to make those platforms be more responsible, if they're causing the numbers of like the younger kids, but adults too, loneliness is up, depression's up, suicide's up. Clearly we're becoming so polarized we can't progress, and it's not just in this country, it's all around the world. So I'd say that it is on us to pay attention to what's happening at a legislative level. Maybe they do need some regulations in place. I forgot what the comparison was they used in the social dilemma, but it was something like the telephones. Telephones are regulated. They can't just do whatever they do with our data. Now, I'm not saying they don't still do it, but I'm just saying there's at least regulations in place. There's none for social media platforms. And so maybe, I'm not super pro regulate everything, but in this case, we're the product. So I want somebody to regulate how the companies are using this product. So I don't know. So that's all I got. I don't know what else we can do.
On the iPhone, and I know there's not everybody uses iPhones, but there is a way it automatically tracks how long you use each app. And there are limits you can set for yourself. But the kicker is that, because I set limits for myself, once I actually looked, because just like you were saying, when I looked at, I don't use my phone that much. That's ridiculous. I cannot believe people use their phone. And then I look and I'm like, oh my God, yeah. That's scary. That's like hours. Yeah. How's that possible? So I set limits for myself. But the funny part is that you can put 1 more minute, 15 more minutes, ignore limit for today. And how many times have I clicked, just ignore the limit? So it's kind of useless, but you have to actually use it efficiently. And the other thing that I think is really important about the legislative aspect, I don't know about you guys, but how many times when you download an app or there's an update to your phone and they send you that privacy policy?
I know.
You read it?
Nope.
I don't. I scroll through it because it's too long and it's legal jargon I don't understand, and I scroll to the bottom and say agree. Well, what am I agreeing to? I have no idea. Maybe I should start reading that, and maybe other people should too.
I've read a couple. Again, because of this, when I was looking at it for the workshops, I'm like, what are we signing? I'd seen something on TV about you're signing away all your rights if something goes wrong, basically. But at the same time, this is a good point with regulation. If you don't agree, you can't use the app, right? So if you want to use the app, you got to. That's a weird thing. Like you wouldn't go into any other legal agreement that way. Like if it's something you want and you're like, or you'll do it our way and you have no protection or you don't get it. Like, would you ever sign something like that? And we do it every day. We absolutely do it every day.
Yeah, there needs to be some accountability and legal action taken, because it's, like they said, it's going to lead to civil war, which is a real possibility.
It's crazy.
That's scary. It's scary.
Go ahead.
We need to take responsibility for critical thinking and where we get our information from. It's like, because it's published on Facebook, we give it some kind of credibility when we shouldn't. It's like going into a bookstore and picking up a self-published zine and taking all of that information that whoever this is published this as fact. Mm-hmm. And it's just, we wouldn't do that. Like we'd be like, oh man, this is insane. Look at this guy. But for some reason, if we read it on the internet or we read it on Facebook or whatever, it's like, oh, this is fact. And it's just not.
No, I agree with that. And the other thing too, I was thinking about, because again, this goes back to money. So like when I don't agree with a store's policy on something, I stop shopping at the store, right? It's like, I'm not going to give them my money. I'll go somewhere else. That's the only power we have in a capitalistic society, right? Just don't spend your money there. But I was also thinking in terms of, I didn't understand originally, even the first time I heard fake news, it was like, there's fact and there's not fact.
Yeah.
Those are the two choices. And I didn't understand like the flat earthers. That was funny that was in there, because that was one of the ones that got my attention. Like, how could they think that, right? This is before I understood how this worked. But the other thing came up with Vanessa the other day about when you buy something on the internet, and then you've got ads popping up everywhere that you go. And so I started thinking about how often even I've seen something that looks enticing, like it'll be something that looks controversial, and it'll say, click here for more information, and it's really clickbait, right? So how many times are we encouraging that by clicking? Or well, I guess we do as a company follow some people, but I'm just not into the subscribing and following. And I ask people to do it for for our podcast, but it's not the most critical thing. But I don't like the click through thing. And so I think it's like, also, that's another way that we withhold money, is don't click. And when you get those ads, my funniest one, I won't say the name of the company because I don't want to get sued, but the funniest one to me, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I'll buy something, and I'm not going to stop shopping online. So I'm just going to say that right now. Especially not during the pandemic, but it is convenient. I mean, it's super easy, super convenient. But the dumbest thing I've ever seen is that I buy something, especially from this one company, and then everything I open after that has that same item, 45 images of it. Try this. Oh, like, if I just bought it, why would I want another one of those? Like, at least they should be smart enough to know to give me something that goes with it, right? Mm-hmm. That part's not that smart yet. I forgot what you had said you were.
Don't give any ideas.
They're listening.
I forgot it was the blue glasses that you were shopping for. And then all of a sudden you get a ton of ads. Yeah. So it's like, so they don't know I purchased it. They do know I purchased it. They know everything about us online, right? But it's almost like they're not sure I purchased it, but I looked at it. So I'm assuming that's what's happening. And then you get 45. In my case, it was umbrellas. I bought 11 patio umbrellas, which is a lot of umbrellas. I don't need any more for the rest of my life. It was to cover the backyard. And instead, umbrellas. And it's irritating, right? But to go back to the original point, I think somewhere in there, that's also a legislative issue. Like, they're spying on your shopping. So if you went, the stores do it too, because they're keeping track, and then you get coupons for it. But it just seems like somehow it's an invasion of privacy that they can not only see what you're purchasing, but then try to sell you more of it. To me, that seems like an invasion of privacy. But
well, that's also like the cookies, right? Cookies on a website. In order to browse that website, you have to agree to the cookies. Yeah. Well, cookies track you. That's what a cookie is. It's tracking everything that you're doing on that website, everything you're looking at, how long you're spending on each, bit of information. Yeah. And then those people can backtrack and contact you and put ads in front of your face. It's like, it doesn't make, but I have to agree to it. So where's my rights?
Yeah. That's what I told Vanessa, just clear it out every day. I clear out the cookies. I'm like, I can't stand it. But so now I'll ask the same question. So Jessie, for you, how would you feel if you couldn't use your smartphone for once every 3 days?
I honestly think that I would be relieved.
I
think I would be bored, and I would really struggle at first, because, it's weird. Ever since I got a smartphone, I spend a lot of time just watching stuff on YouTube. Like, when I'm bored, I don't want, like, my attention span has been really affected. I don't want to sit and watch an entire TV show. I want to watch like 10 minutes of whatever it is, and it's right there on YouTube. So I think I would be bored at first, and then eventually relieved, and that I have time to do other things. And I don't know, it helped me like figure out the things that I want to do. Because now when I'm like, oh, what do I want to do? And it's like, it just takes too much time to figure it out. So I'm just gonna lay down and watch a YouTube video. Yeah, relieved. And no one's contacting me or texting me or calling me about anything important. So if I could catch up with everybody every 3 days, it'd be fine.
Yeah, I'd be relieved too. Melissa, I'm guessing yours might be different because of kids, but
I'd be relieved. To be honest, my schedule is so crazy that I don't feel like I would miss out on much. I can check my email on my laptop if I really need to check my email. So if I didn't have my phone, I mean, I get text messages and stuff like that, but now with the pandemic, the kids are here with me, so they don't need to contact me. They can just walk downstairs. I'm really, really trying my hardest to stay away from my phone. It's gotten to the point where I have the opposite feeling about it now. Every time I see it, it's like, oh, I don't want to get on it, which is a good thing. I think that's a start. I did want to chime in though. It just kind of popped into my brain that it's interesting now with the invent of the smartphone that none of us have landlines anymore, right? So we're depending on the cell phone now to actually communicate with anybody. We can't just pick up our landline anymore. And it seems like, well, why do I want that extra bill? Well, maybe that's why now you sleep with your phone, because now you don't have that landline in order to call 911 if something happens in the middle of the night. But maybe we need to go back to that. Maybe wired isn't so bad.
I have my biggest complaint about smartphones has always been that they're terrible phones. The sound quality is terrible. The coverage is terrible, which is why I couldn't get a landline, but I do have the VoIP, which is so much better. It's just a phone. It doesn't do all, I don't know why we call smartphones phones. They're computers, they're devices. They're not phones. It's the worst feature of them is the phone part. But I agree. I think, I think it's by design. Obviously, even if they didn't know what they were creating, they knew that it's very hard to get addicted to a big clunky piece of equipment that you have to hold up to your ear. Frankly, it just is. So that's
not sexy. Yeah.
In the work. So I do want to just touch on one more thing that I'm struggling with, and that's email. And so, of course, well, I've had a lot of concerns lately. So, we, as a company, we're on the G Suite. So Google's got every bit of information about us. And I'm not slamming the product in any way. It really works well. But I wonder, because I've seen things happen where I send an email and then I suddenly see an ad or something pop up that is related to something that was in that email. And I am so bombarded. The business email account is a little bit different because it's largely just business. There's very little junk mail that gets through that. The filters work really well. But on my personal email, it gets out of control. I mean, I don't know how many times I go in and unsubscribe or mark it as spam or do whatever. And it's like there's such a flood, or the same companies use different reply addresses or whatever, so that hundreds every day. And so just to go through and delete or take the time to unsubscribe, it's overwhelming to me. And I almost was going to just start ignoring the personal email account. And then I realized, okay, I've cut off my personal connection with social media. I never use it. I don't know what's happening anywhere. So I don't go on Facebook. I don't even know how to get into my Pinterest account. In all honesty, I don't even know how to do it. I'm not sure I remember how to get into Twitter and Instagram. I think something just came up recently, like within the last couple of months, that I had to ask you how to get in, Melissa, and now I've already forgotten. So I've disconnected personally from social media. I'm not connected with anybody anymore. LinkedIn, you talk about the bubbles. So, and again, there's this pressure as a business that you're supposed to be on social media. How else are people going to hear about you? So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. And then what happens is I get all these requests, to connect. And at first I was like, I'm not, just like with my Facebook, I will say, my personal Facebook, I never connected with anyone I didn't know. I didn't want a bunch of people on there with a bunch of junk. I wanted only positive stuff, and that was pretty effective. But with LinkedIn, it's from all over the world, and it's people, so they read about me, or they want to sell me something, or they want to sell me a service or whatever. And so I will look at their profile. Hello, this is another, how much time are we wasting, right? I'll look at the profile just to see, is it somebody like in this industry, or, some reason to connect. And then either ignore it or accept it. Well, when you accept it, it pops you into LinkedIn. I never go into LinkedIn. I don't have a tab for it. It's not meant, but it pops you into LinkedIn. And I, across the top, Melissa, you'd have a heart attack. There's like every bubble has double or triple digits in it, right? And I just immediately shut it down. I never read it. I never look around in there. So what are we doing? Like, what's this behavior that we feel like we have to? Yeah. But there's you get those little reminders. Such and such is still waiting for your reply. I don't want to be in the position to reject someone. I don't know them. You know what I mean? That feels, it's kind of like what Jesse was talking about earlier. It's like, then it feels like I need to respond. I need to do something with it. And I didn't create it. So again, it's not being driven by me. It's being driven by this company that's doing it. So maybe that's the bottom line is, do you want this done to you, or do you want to take control of it and you use it the way you want to? And, you know, the thing we used to say in the workshops all the time is it's not a smartphone. It's a device, and you can use it smartly or not. And I think smartly in this case is really mindfully. It's really trying to figure out, how do we use it for good? I'll give you a great example. There are we get a lot of donations at My Stuff Bags through social media. We don't do anything. We're not having to spend any money. It's a great charity. But people on social media start creating those campaigns, right? And the word spreads. A ton of it's through Facebook. We get money in through Facebook every month. Then that's a great way to use social media.
Yeah.
But again, they're not driving us, and they're not even driving the people that are doing the campaigns. It's from a personal connection, and they use social media for good, and the money comes back. So I think there's a lot of good for that. But the rest of it, I don't know, other than changing each individual's own behavior, I don't know how else we make any progress. I'm kind of happy our whole company, none of us are completely, obsessed with social media, at least. at least within our little bubble. I don't know. And I think the other thing maybe is exposing ourselves to what we consider the other side.
Yeah, I think that's really important. One of the ladies in the Social Dilemma mentioned that she tries to fill her Twitter feed with people she doesn't agree with, because then at least she's seeing what the other side is seeing and seeing why they believe what they believe. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, honestly. And I do try to do that. I do try to, if I see, it's another suggestion too, is before you share an article, and this drives me up the wall, before you share an article that you think is news, that you think is fact. We've discussed this before, where real journalism is pretty much dead. So you have to do the fact checking. You can't rely on the journalists anymore. So now you need to go in, you see an article that you think is important for other people to know about. Why don't you make sure that the things in that article are true before you go and share it? And now it's gotten shared to 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And it's just a domino effect.
Yeah, it takes off.
You don't know what's real and what's not. So just do a little homework.
Do any of you get your news from social media only? Not from TV or reading?
No.
I do primarily get my news from social media, just because I don't want to sit down and watch the news. Yeah. Especially if it's like an ongoing thing. You're just sitting there watching it, and it's negative stories after negative stories, and then I just don't want to hear it. So, but then that is also a negative part when you're getting your news from social media, is that you only get select news. I do follow things like Now This or Stay Tuned, where it kind of does cover like worldwide news, but it's like I don't know if I'm getting everything, Well,
but you could turn that around, where you pick the news sources that you trust and go to them when you want the news, instead of doing it through like a general feed. Because that was one thing that I realized is different. I can turn on the TV and I can flip between CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Like I can see the different perspectives. But if you're doing like Facebook news, or I see it on my iPad, and I can't get this off. I got to look some more. But suddenly it's got a whole, like a column on the side of the homepage that's news, Apple News. And I didn't sign up for it. I don't know why I have that now. I don't want it because, of course, that's how they get you in, right? You open up your iPad and you see a big headline. And the other way is my email. I get all these things on email about news in all capital letters, breaking news or whatever. And I check the source. Like I really consider the source. So I don't have a problem watching the difference between now, say, Fox and CNN. But I'm listening with I'm trying to be very mindful. So, if a person has the proof in their hands, the search warrant or, whatever it is, okay, that's fact. But when they say, so let's connect the dots, that's not fact anymore, right? Then now it's turned into that person's opinion. Doesn't mean their opinion's right or wrong. It just means I'm trying to pay much more attention to what's actually known versus what's speculation or hyperbole or, you know, whatever it is. So
I think sometimes even the tone can influence your opinion or your take on the facts. Like I listen to KPCC and I'm very aware that it's like a liberal leaning news source, and you can hear it in the way that the jockeys or whatever interview like Republican politicians versus Democratic politicians. There's a tone there and like a prodding and a challenging that isn't there when they're talking to someone who has opinions that align with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to listen for the facts, but also you've got to listen for the tone or like the more unconscious things that you're taking in as well.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. So, you know, before, when we watched Hacking Your Mind, the one we all watched was the one that had all the social media stuff. And then there was another one coming that was going to have the solutions. And so I was all excited about the solutions. And then I find it really ironic that basically the solution is mindfulness, which we're already doing. but it did make me hone in on, I don't know how mindful, you know, how much attention do you pay? It's permeated our whole lives. So how much attention do you really pay every day? So I do think it's a good reminder. I do think it's a good prompt to get us to think about it. I do think it's scary. You know, there was, I don't remember which program it is. I think it might've been in Hacking Your Mind, but about doom scrolling. So now I have absolutely done that before, not knowing it was called doom scrolling, but where something happens and you really want to know what's like something, you know, I can't think of the latest one maybe, but you're looking for, out of fear or out of anxiety, like what's happening next. So you start scrolling through trying to find every tiny bit of news, which of course there's no new news yet 5 minutes after something's happened, or 10 minutes, or usually even days. But it's called doom scrolling. So you start looking for the bad news. What's coming next? What's about to happen? That's disturbing. Okay. But in general, despite the divisions, I mean, that's the scary part. That's where, you know, when they throw things around like civil war or tearing up the fabric of society, or the whole world's going to end because we're not paying attention. I think in reality, there are enough intelligent people out there that this concept of paying attention, that's all this is, just pay attention to what's happening and try to be a little more open and try to realize that we're being manipulated, and not just by these companies. Other countries are manipulating us. But I think if we start bringing that into awareness and we do try to practice mindful, whatever we want to call it, social media participation, then maybe we can help calm it down. I don't mean us four alone, but I'm just saying in general, I think there are enough people out there that don't like the way the world is. And if this is the solution, I mean, how hard is this? Just pay attention and be more open and less critical. Like, quit screaming at each other and just consider, well, no wonder you think what you do, because now I understand what you've been seeing for the past 20 years, and vice versa. You know, maybe that's the beginning. So nobody has to give up their phone yet. But it's discernment. So it's not even judgment. It's just discerning. When you hear something, see something, before you share something, just take that moment to think, okay, why or how, or is it necessary? And start there.
Good idea.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion. I find this all fascinating, Ben. And it's amazing how quickly and rapidly, I guess is a better word, this has all changed over the past, I think 2009 was when, 2009 that iPhones came out? Something like that?
Oh. No, it must have been before that.
Or Facebook. I can't remember, but it's not, you're talking about,
you would think. Yeah.
It's not like they've been around for 30 years. It's amazing to me how rapidly it's changed. You all have iPhones?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the only Android user? Well, either way, it doesn't matter which one you're on, they can still manipulate you. So.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.